of collecting the data. So 6 years from now, the BLS and the census will be replicating what we are doing, roughly. Maybe they will do it better, which I will be glad if they do it better. The other one that I'm in charge to change is how the census of the United States is going to be collected in 2020. I am changing the technology so we can collect the census in a phone like this, as opposed to a piece of paper. So I'm working on the security to do that. So I think the statistical offices are going to change and they will be able to do it. So there are two mechanisms. One, wait until we do it, or the second is we teach the statistical offices how to do it. Now, this has to be big. This is not something you can do just by your own. It's just a little bit big. Producer price indexes we don't collect because the information is not public, so we don't produce PPI numbers, nor we will ever do it. And finally, inflation expectations. I really hope that the day our indexes become a benchmark, that this affects inflation expectations. But for the moment, it hasn't. And the reason is, I'm still learning how to construct what I just showed you. Is that okay? I'm still in the learning mode. So if I'm still in the learning mode, the financial system is still learning. So we're all learning. But I can assure you that we have designed investment strategies already that are incredibly successful, taking advantage of this because we are measuring the inflation rate much faster than ever before and much faster than any expectation can be formed, ever. So in that sense, I know it is working. But hopefully, 10 years from now, we can have a benchmark index called, the State Street Price Tag Index of the United States, and that is what moves the expectations. And this will not be an expectation. You understand? Okay, I'll finish with this, but let me just say something. What I do is not terribly exciting. I measure the inflation rate that happened yesterday. There's no expectation here. I am not predicting anything. I just measured yesterday. So we'll come back to that in my final remarks. More questions? Yes?
Yes. Hussein Shahrur from MBK Capital. I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. I have a question for you about the model to predict or to understand the relationship between inflation and the equity returns. First, don't you think that the time period you chose, which is starting 2008, is not the best time period to understand the relationship, given the many government interventions that will affect both variables, the inflation and equity returns? Also, isn't the model a bit simplistic to have only equity returns predicted by inflation? And what about the other variables that you can use in the equation? Thank you.
So first, the models are only run on the last 3 years, so do not include the 2008 crisis. But you are absolutely correct. What I just showed you is one of the examples. We try to do this more professionally. Let me explain this. The person that is irresponsible, that doesn't do this professionally, that's me, okay? I run a regression. And then the people in State Street Associates, they said, no, Roberto, that's not the regression we want to show our clients. We want to do one that is respectable. And they improve me. And they add other factors there. And in fact, yes, this goes through a learning process. Now, the first thing that I do is I said, in a naive regression, do I have explanatory power? Because if in the naive regression I have no explanatory power, then I should try nothing else. So that's what I just showed you is the naive regression. And that's the first step. But it's never, ever the last one. We actually look at other variables that are daily, that are interest rate, that are affecting equity prices, and you can do that. Now, one thing that you can be sure is that our data is exogenous to stock prices. Because our inflation rate is what happened yesterday. Your stock return is what is happening today. So in some sense, the regression statistically is correct. But anyway, yes, that's a good question. There was another hand that I saw. Yes?
Good morning.
Okay, so I'm totally lost. Yeah. Yes, sorry.
My name is Khalid Al-Hajri from Kuwait Investment Authority, and very glad to hear and to listen to this valuable presentation. My question to you, from your point of view, how do you see the way of calculating the inflation the effect of inflation between countries are using and having tax system and countries like Kuwait who doesn't have. And from your point of view, do you think the countries who's not using tax system are more lucky comparing to others? This is what I'd like to. Thank you.
So, wow, that's a very good question. When you mean different tax system, you mean lucky is from the inflation perspective, no? Because I will be really happy if I don't have to pay taxes in general. But from the inflation point of view, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. I don't have an answer immediately. So, yeah. Very, very good question. In fact, it will motivate some thinking. Yeah, very, very good question. What we do is that we collect the prices that are posted. So let me just explain that. So in Europe, the prices include taxes. So in Europe, we collect an inflation rate that includes the taxes. In the United States, the prices do not include the taxes, so we collect it without taxes. So even countries that have taxation, they don't all have the same practices. Is that okay? So, and we find that the differences are very, very small, including or not including taxes. But your question is deeper than that, and I have no answer. So that's why I answer a different question. Yes. Oh, somebody has a microphone. Yes.
Yeah, Subhajit Gupta from Kuwait Investment Authority. Thank you for your presentation. I have basically two questions. You alluded to Walmart and Tiffany and how they responded to inflation. My question is, do you have any basically theoretical portfolios that are positively or negatively correlated with inflation? That is, in the real world, we can design portfolios that can respond to such inflation signals. And the second part to it is, does it actually have any long-term sustenance? Because obviously, I can understand the impact for it for a trader, but for someone like KIA, does it actually have any meaning?
Great question. Great question. So, again, two-part question. So, what motivated this question on equity prices was a very old paper of 1963 by Grilikes in the United States, where he actually made the claim that Procter & Gamble should be a good hedge against inflation, exactly from the same reasons that I gave you. And in fact, I didn't do the initial analysis. It was done by David Turkington, which is at State Street Associates. And he didn't know that the original example was Procter & Gamble. I told him the story about Walmart. But he ran this regression, and he gave me the top 25 stocks that are perfect hedge against inflation. And guess who was there? It was Procter & Gamble. So in fact, I was very impressed. So there are theoretical reasons why you expect them to be like that. And in fact, it's not industry. It's actually stores. You see, Walmart is different than Costco. Very different. And in fact, the products where they buy, how they sell is very different. So even though if they belong to the same classification as an industry, they have different hedges. So there are theoretical reasons, but we don't know them very well for the moment. We have not done the research. I think this will help to understand the research that has to be done to be able to construct them in practice and the other. The other question that you have is about long-run hedging. Unfortunately, we started doing this 5 years ago. So the longest data we have is 5 years. So I cannot offer you any hedge beyond a year or two. Is that okay? This is, I can do very little. Hopefully what we learn from this is something that will help you design a portfolio that will allow you to hedge 10-year inflation rates. But we will have to wait another 15 for me to offer a good answer to just that question. You see my point? So, for example, Canada, we have a year and a half of data only in Canada, so I can do very little in Canada. So, I mean, the Canadians are very upset because they always tell me why you discriminate against us. And the US has 5 years of data, we only have a year and a half. I said, well, it's hard. It's not that simple. So, so in some sense, the last question is a limitation of what we have done. So maybe 20 years from now. By the way, I'm planning to do this for 25 more years, so don't worry. We'll have this. Yes, yes. At what time?
Yeah. Mohsen Bagneed from the American University of Kuwait. Roberto, one thing I don't understand, why didn't you collect information on inflation at the producer level, wholesale level, and the retail level to understand where inflation is coming from, and also interpretation? Is it currency exchange rate? Like in Latin America, I know it had a big impact in the past. So interpretation of the changes in the price index, I think having it at different levels will give you a good explanation where inflation is coming from.
Yeah, it will be, yeah, I agree, it's fantastic, but the prices between producers is not public information. I only use public sources of information. So, I mean, some producer prices are public information, like the price of electricity between business to business, phone services, mostly services, you can have measures of business to business. But I really don't know at what price a farmer sells to the distributor that then sells to the retailer that then sells to the consumer. All those prices are first contracts that are not observable and they are confidential data. So I could become a hacker, no? And then hack the computers, but that probably is not very sustainable. I might be able to do this. So I agree totally with you. That's why if we are able to change the way the statistical offices do their business, then a statistical office might have the ability to tap into that confidential data. And then we might have a much better picture of what happens to the inflation rate in the world. There was a gentleman that here wanted to do a follow-up question. Yes, okay, yes. Yes, I'll be your microphone.
I'm quite satisfied with your answer to my question about the institutional setup of conducting or producing the daily data for Kuwait or for the GCC. I don't understand in particular why do we have to wait your visits to Kuwait and not have counterpart teams in Kuwait that can do the works and expedite the process? Can you? Thanks.
When I said that we teach them, the statistical offices, is that I teach statistical offices how to do this. But two things have to happen. First, the statistical office should want to do it. I mean, somebody wants to do it. Otherwise, it's something very important. I don't waste my time. Ever. My life is far too exciting to be wasting my time. So I am not selling anything, ever. If somebody wants to buy what I am selling, fine with me. But if they don't, that's fine with me. The United Nations did not want to send the airplane to Bangkok based on this data. I said, well, I can do nothing. So if they don't want to use the information, that I can do very little. So statistical offices first they have to come and do it. But this is something that you do with a lot of computer scientists. You will need computer scientists to do the programming and do the online stores. And then you need statisticians to understand how to do the computation. Can be replicated. Now, I have to tell you, there is a small company that have tried to replicate what we do for the United States. You probably know this company. It's not very big. It's not very famous. It's called Google. And they have tried for 10 years to replicate what Alberto Cavallo and myself have done for the United States. Have you seen an index of inflation rate from Google for the United States? No. because it's not only about having resources. It's about understanding how to use and how to weight. So I am willing to share that information with the statistical office, but I'm not going to share that information with someone that is in the private sector. So that's in fact, that's kind of the way we operate. So a statistical office, I can share it, but not somebody else. Yes?
Good morning. Paul Quigley is my name from Kuwait Finance House. I have two questions related to hedging. You mentioned in passing that older people face higher inflation risks through the cost of healthcare. Does that finding motivate a higher equity holding within the retirement funds? Because typically with pension funds, people move into fixed income as they get closer to retirement. So the inflation risk from your studies, does that indicate more equity holding in that? And the second question relates to the frequency of your data. If you've got high frequency data, to do high frequency hedging, does that include or incur additional hedging expense or trading expense that mitigates the benefit?
So in terms of the second part of the question, we are just starting to do this. So we have no idea what this entails. As I said, you are the first ones that are seeing this. And this is, the first one not working in State Street or in Price-Stats or at MIT. So we are just starting, we are just organizing those portfolios and understanding what they look like, and we will do our test. So, and the second part, I have no idea what that will entail. On the first part, this is something that is well known in economies. I think that